Let's get this thing started. So our last panel entitled The Principals and the Dean of Students. Some important people that make this wonderful school run. And honestly, I have to take a moment to thank you guys for the hard work. And I know this is a very busy 2 weeks in transitioning back to on-campus learning and everything. But it's been nonstop since March, and it's without, I couldn't be remiss if I didn't say thank you to you and all the hard work that we've done with our current students, and just continuing to show that leadership that Jesuit has that carries on through every year and every circumstance. So thank you all for being here. And so with us today in our final session, we have Principal Dr. Michael Wood in the class of 99. We have Dr. Fadia Desmond, who's our Assistant Principal for Instruction and Student Life. And we have our Dean of Students, Roddric Theodule. And so I guess I wanted, if you guys have questions throughout this on various topics, we'll try to get to as many as possible. Feel free to type them into the Q&A answer, and we will get to those. But I guess I'll start it off with Principal Wood, principal of Jesuit High School, alumni of Jesuit High School. You worked at Loyola High School. You got your doctorate at Creighton University. Jesuit has been, and Jesuit education has been a common thread through your life for a very long time. So what does it mean to be back at Jesuit in the position that you're in? Maybe talk about, how long you've been principal and some of the wonderful things about Jesuit High School. Take it away.
Thank you, Matthew. As you were going through some of those experiences of my work in Jesuit secondary education, my own education, there's actually one thread that I would say links it all. And it's that my work as a student, first and foremost, at Jesuit High School in the late 90s gave me something that I really needed, and that was confidence and self-esteem. And at that time in my life, I was like many young men out there, kind of just wayward and not knowing what was what. But through those 4 years, I left here feeling good about myself and confident in who I was. And what one of those things was I felt that I loved learning. I came in from being an average student to a great student who loved it. And education then became my career and my focus, both in doing it and learning and getting some degrees in theology, working as a teacher and a coach at Loyola High School in Los Angeles for 12 years, and then being their Dean of Students for 7 years. And then the chance to come back to Jesuit was really a chance to give back, to return the favor, hopefully, to the school that gave me that gift that I think young men need, which is to feel happy, healthy, and good about themselves. Because when they have that, there's nothing that can stop them. And so it is a privilege to return here. This is my 6th year as principal. And hopefully the work that I do with this wonderful team of leaders, with the faculty and staff, and with the students and the parents, helps to give that gift back to students, which is, will they leave here feeling happy, healthy, and good about themselves?
Awesome. Let's next up, Dr. Desmond, who's been here 2 years now, started at the same time as Rod and I believe myself. Back worked at St. Francis for. Tell us about yourself. Why now at Jesuit and your role here, and what?
Thank you for the introduction, Matthew. Yes, I'm in my 3rd year here at Jesuit High School. I spent 3 years as an assistant principal at St. Francis High School prior to coming here. And I think I'd like to just share kind of the perspective of having worked in a public high school setting in the past. I've worked at public universities, and as both a assistant principal here, but also as a parent, I feel like I can speak to why this high school experience has so much meaning and significance for our students. I have a son who's a sophomore here, and he he came in, he knew just a small group of students from his K-8 school, and his whole world opened up when he got to Jesuit High School. And he's probably more of an academic than an athlete, but he found his home on the football field. And I never imagined that he'd live in a world of both really academically enriched. He's in AP Computer Science Principles. It's the first year of a 2-year cycle of AP Computer Science courses that we offer at Jesuit. And it's amazing to see him in that realm as an academic, but also now working with our assistant principal and dean of students, Dean Theodule, out on the football field for JV football. So I look at that experience that he's had developing, both sides of his whole person. And I love that he found that place here at school. I now have a son who we have interesting conversations, and he has ideas and opinions, and I saw such a dramatic shift again as his world opened up here. He's just matured in a way that I can't take credit for, but I attribute it to his time here at Jesuit and his teachers that he's met, ideas that he's developed in class, friends that he's met, people he spent time with after school at football. He's already growing into a young man that I'm so proud of. So I am personally grateful for Jesuit High School.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. That is awesome. Yes. That's awesome. I think that the experience and the common thread through all of our sessions that we've had is that involvement and trying new things. And the more you put into Jesuit, the more you get out of Jesuit. And I think that Richard is a great testament to exactly that. And then without further ado, we have Roddric Theodule, Assistant Principal and Dean of Students, who was a Bellarmine grad, went to Santa Clara for a bit as well. And I think it also speaks to Jesuit. You may know Jesuit as Jesuit High School, 1200 Jacob Lane, but it's a vast community of secondary schools, colleges around the world that when you go out into the world and you meet someone from Bellarmine, one of my groomsmen in my wedding was a Bellarmine Bell, and we connected at Santa Clara when I attended there back in the day. So Rod, without further ado, if you want to talk a little bit about your time here and what's going on.
Sure. I think, Matthew, that was a great segue. Jesuit has been an extension of my academic family, if you will, for the greater part of my academic career. So my 2+ now years here has not felt like a new experience to me at all. Moving my family from San Jose to Sacramento was obviously a big undertaking, but the people at Jesuit have been so welcoming, and just the level of comfort that I had with Jesuit education, the principles and mission that we all stand for, made that transition really easy for me. I appreciate the people here for going out of their way to welcome me as a new person, much like we pride ourselves on doing with our new students. So I felt like I've had an opportunity to grow and learn and develop as a leader during my time here, learning from Dr. Wood and Dr. Desmond and the rest of our faculty and staff. I would say that probably the thing that makes me most comfortable being here is this is an environment in which we try to support each other as much as possible. And I think we see that trickle down to our students. That support for each other is what helped Dr. Wood develop the passion for education that he described. Helps Richard Desmond feel supported to try new things like Dr. Desmond described. It's a wonderful place to be. Father McGarry often calls it more than just a school, and it really is to me as well. So I'm appreciative for the opportunity to be here. Matthew, thank you for the warm welcome for all of us, an introduction for all of us. I want to thank you too for putting together an unprecedented open house experience for folks that was just a real treat to witness. Just the creativity, the ingenuity. It's been a really great weekend. And kind of made me even more excited to come back to campus next week, seeing all the wonderful work that you and Chris have done to prepare our next crop of students coming in next year. So thank you guys.
I appreciate the kind words. It's open house is always a fun and unique opportunity, and just to have to go back to the drawing board was a wonderful creative task. And to personally, my goal in what we did yesterday and what we're doing now and what we continue to do to allow our parents to have not only an informed decision when they're making this big decision to high school, but also showing the spirit and community of Jesuit. I mean, it is more than a school. It's as parents, the parents you get to meet, as students, the new brothers you get to meet, but also in this unique time that to bring a little of the excitement and enthusiasm that goes into going into high school. I remember when I was a freshman coming into Jesuit, and just to create a little bit of that, there's plenty more to come, and I'm excited to get back to where we are. But it isn't without the hard work of a whole handful of great people at this school that really, really care about these students. And so what I would say, so I'll just kind of open it up. If you have any questions for our panel, this is kind of an open discussion. Feel free to type them in. I'd be happy to ask them along. But I have one. As seeing students come in as freshmen and then growing and then leaving at graduation, Mike, what do you want out of every student that comes to Jesuit High School in their 4-year transition? What would you hope for them to gain by the time they left and graduated across that stage?
I think the first thing is self-awareness. I think a lot of where goodness happens begins with self-awareness. That's kind of knowing who you are and who you feel you're called to be. Not that you have your whole life planned out, but I think when people are uncertain of who they are, bad decisions are made. They become, it's just more challenging when you're not sure who you are. And so I think what I want them to leave here feeling a good sense of who they are, where they belong, and where they want to go. That's the simplest piece. I want them to be academically curious. One of the things that we are challenged in Jesuit schools, especially college prep schools like ours, is there's certainly these students who really want to achieve to go to a good college. That's great. They should do that, and we have a great plan for them to make that work. The challenge is if they're doing that at the expense of the knowledge that we hope that they have. So in Jesuit education isn't for the sake of learning something. It's actually has a larger purpose, which is the moral development, the development of character. So our hope is for our students that through the experience and the process of a Jesuit education, that they achieve those goals that they feel they want for themselves with that self-knowledge. But they didn't use this just simply as a check mark along the way, but actually they started to fall in love with those things they were learning, with the people with whom they were learning and the things that they were doing. So I would sum up to say self-awareness, but curiosity and true integrity to the process is what we desire for them. And we see it. It's why we do it every year, right? One thing I was asked in my interview to be principal was, do you like high school kids? I thought that was a pretty good question. Like, you can't do this if you don't like kids. And one of the most rewarding things I get to do is read those names at graduation, because it is that name is read. It's all right, something has happened here, something special has happened here, some growth has happened here, and they're leaving here in a better place than when they got here.
Awesome. Couldn't have said it better myself. We do have a question, and I think it's an important question. And it says here, how do you handle race indifference, and how do you deal with kids who have social awkwardness? Does anybody want to tackle that one?
Sure. I would say one of the greatest things about a Jesuit education, whether it's Jesuit High School or Bellarmine or Loyola or any of the other places that we've talked about, is we really focus on the care for each individual. And so what I would say to how do we deal with race and difference is really giving our students an opportunity to learn about themselves. High school's probably the time period in life where you learn the most about yourself. And so we really try to dive deep into that and give students the opportunity to learn from their peers. We've got cultural affinity clubs and lots of other opportunities for students to explore and learn more about themselves. But we also want to provide opportunities for our students to share what they've learned about themselves in their own communities with the remainder of the community, so that we're learning from each other, and that we're learning to live with each other, to trust one another, to learn from one another, and to celebrate those differences, if you will. Because at the end of the day, we firmly believe that we are all creatures that are made in the image and likeness of a God that loves us just the way that we were made. And so we want to celebrate that as much as possible. And we want to give our students an opportunity to not just hear us telling them how to think or what to think or what to do, but to help to build an opportunity for them to discover and share. And then as far as social awkwardness is concerned, I think that's just high school in general. I don't know a high school kid, present company included, that wasn't socially awkward at some point. And like Dr. Wood said, that's the fun of it for us, is watching them grow and helping them to grow. That's why we all do this job. I would really hope that we don't have anyone that's graduating that's the same person as they were when they came in as a freshman. I know from my experience here over the last few years, we see a tremendous amount of growth, academically, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. You see kids blossom here. They find their niche. There's so many different things to do, and so many different avenues that they can participate. I think one of the things that's most striking for me is that our students are not necessarily cliquish the way that you would normally anticipate high school to be. Our football players are acting in the play. And if they're not acting in the play, they're going to the play to support those guys, and vice versa. So it's a place where, we talk a lot about the brotherhood, but we do a lot to support each other, and hopefully to make each other feel like we're part of the brotherhood, so that you have more opportunities for social interaction and they learn to grow out of that social awkwardness.
And the only thing I'd add to that, Dean Theodule, is this this larger idea that everyone finds their home here at Jesuit High School, that the social awkwardness is almost, although developmentally that's a normal stage, especially transitioning from 8th grade to 9th grade. But I think our boys quickly find different homes throughout campus, and multiple homes throughout campus. There's almost no awkwardness in that, because everybody has a place. And it takes a little time, but there's that eventual place that they get to of comfort, of finding their people, multiple groups of people. And like Rod just said, they get to this place of being juniors and seniors, and just such a transformation that, I'm sure parents see that as well in their sons.
I couldn't agree with you guys more on that one as well. There's a story that we've told throughout the panels today. There's a home for you here at Jesuit, even if it's not the one you thought you planned out. There's a spot for you. There are no-cut sports. There's so many opportunities. And just looking back at my time at Jesuit as a student, my two best friends, who I see regularly here, even till to this day, are a guy that I played soccer with and a guy that I sang with in the choir. And it's just exciting to be able to help those students find their homes.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the greatest strengths of Jesuit is community. The teachers love to teach. They love students that are engaged and active. And I'd say, coming into freshman year and thinking back to that freshman year experience is coming out of your shell, and Jesuit will provide the opportunities for you, whether it's through retreats or in the classroom setting, or sports programs or our VPA programs. It takes a little bit of confidence and a little bit of fortitude to get out there and to say hello to folks and put your best foot forward. And that may come at different times for different students, but there is a lot of opportunities for our students to find their place. I have a follow-up question to the previous question, and it's asking about how diverse is the student body at Jesuit, and how about the staff? Is there one that?
Sure, I can
speak to?
I can answer those questions. I can answer it with very specific data, actually, because it matters to us a great deal to have a diverse student body and a diverse staff. And before I answer the question, I would say it's something we actually are working to increase and always have been. We are currently, for those who have reported, 52% Caucasian or white. We have 20% not reporting or other. 6% multiracial, 12% Hispanic Latino, 7% Asian American, and 4% African American, and 0.5% of Native American. So our diversity numbers among the student body is an area of priority for us to continue doing what we can to reach out to as large a group of folks to come take advantage of this mission. So that's my answer to the diversity among the student body. In terms of the faculty and staff, I don't have those percentage of diversity. For racial diversity, it is a predominantly white staff. We do have faculty and staff of color for sure. In terms of gender, it's about half and half male and female. As you're going through, I can actually find the exact numbers on there in a moment, because we do also try to be as transparent as possible with everything that we do on this campus and share with our families.
This next question that we have coming through from Dave Cressman is, what type of college counseling do you offer? And I would say that I am going to have one of those more in-depth info sessions with Amanda Smith, who is our the head of counseling. But we do. Can you guys speak to our counseling, our college counseling that we offer here on campus?
Yeah, sure. Our college guidance department does a really great job of kind of guiding students through the college admissions process. They offer a number of different activities throughout the course of the year to provide information on everything from testing to financial aid and scholarships. We have representatives from hundreds of colleges that visit the campus each fall, and our counseling department organizes those opportunities for our students to interact with those college admissions representatives so that they can learn more about those schools. So our college guidance department is very hands-on with our students, particularly in all 4 years, but particularly in their junior and senior year, and kind of guiding them through the process almost A to Z to try to help pair the student with a college or colleges that meet that student's interests and needs.
Rod, I'll also add to that. I've been incredibly impressed with the parents programming that they offer. I especially saw it most recently with all of the changes and additional questions with college admissions in light of the pandemic and standardized test scores and which schools are counting standardized test scores, all of that wave of new information. The parent programming that the guidance department offers is unbelievable. Multiple per quarter, just multiple evening programs that it's not only information directly from our counselors to parents, but their connections all over the nation, direct connections to admissions offices and admissions officers. They have these incredible relationships that we see as parents, because they're bringing some of those folks and directly connecting them, whether they're coming to campus for presentations or more recently over Zoom webinars, that kind of those introductions that our parents get with the college admissions officers. Again, I attribute that to the work of our guidance counselors and the training that they have, and again, the connections that they make. to counselors. And I'll also add, I know that in some communities, parents feel a bit of pressure when their sons become juniors to hire outside private counselors. And our parents really have the great gift of not having to do that because they get that one-on-one private counseling by virtue of having a Jesuit counselor for their son. So it's just one less thing for a parent to have to worry about, knowing that that guidance comes as part of his 4 years here, as early as, the day he steps foot on campus as a student, and we begin building their course schedules.
I think it's also important to note that we've recently increased our counseling department in terms of the number of counselors that we have, which then of course decreases the caseloads for each of those counselors. And so we're under 200, which is in the college counseling world. If a counselor can have fewer than 200, and we're like at 175, I think, I don't remember the exact number, students per caseload. So that's a really good number and allows the counselor to give the appropriate time and attention. And remember that the 175 students divided, between the 4 class years. So you imagine how many seniors that might be. That really gives the students and the families the attention they need. I think regionally, we're among the lowest in terms of ratio of college counselors to counselees right now. One thing that's also important, can I add one more thing to that, Matthew? I think it's
go for it.
I think one of the things about the ever moving target of the college admissions process, that it's always changing, right? The universities are looking for something different every year, and how do schools and counselors find that spot? One of the constant advantages that a school like Jesuit has is that the academic reputation of the school is known by the universities and our relationships with them. So when they look at a Jesuit graduate, they already know, one, he's probably going to come to our school and stay at our school for 4 years and graduate in 4 years, because they're more likely to do so because they have historical data of Jesuit students being able to do that. When it comes to SAT scores or AP scores, they tend to be quite good. And they like that particular standardized ability to see how well our students are prepared. So the students who have gone before us and who continue to go before us actually give a great advantage of the students who are here now. They get a really good look from the universities, and we found that to be the experience, especially in private universities, but I think it does also help some of the larger public universities as well.
And what I would want to add to it as well is that our counselors, including our mental health and awareness counseling, is that our counselors want our students to be prepared for college and everything that goes into that, but also happy and healthy today, and being a resource. It's college. It's that awkwardness coming in. It's understanding things, or maybe something happening in your life that you need someone to talk to. Is that they're a support system so that they're happy and healthy and able to perform in the classroom as well, and a resource for our students to communicate. And so I have a couple more questions here. I have one. It says, explain racial indifference. I think that we mentioned that. I don't know if that's in reference to the first question that was answered, but I think we answered that. I wouldn't say racial indifference as a topic, what that means. I think that diversity is very important to us here, and furthering it and expanding it through our admissions and connecting a diverse campus is a fruitful campus. And the conversations that we have on our campus speak to that. We want to continue to grow our diverse student body. I'd say, how big is the student body? We are, as the admissions director, I could speak to that. We're over 1,000, somewhere in between 1,000 and 1,100 students, about 260 to 75 students per class, give or take. And then here's a great question. How does Jesuit work to maintain its Roman Catholic identity? You want to tackle that one?
I'll jump on that one. I love Dean Theodule or Dr. Desmond to jump in as well. It's a really important question. I would say the one thing we do is that Ignatius, the founder of the Jesuits, is St. Ignatius. And when he speaks about his relationship with God, he talks about a God who is inviting, who doesn't force or coerce. And we model that here when we work with students, that we want for them to have a relationship with God. And more than that, we want them to have a profound experience of God's love for them. And then more than that, we want them to feel deserving and worthy of that love. So everything we do here is meant to promote that deep relationship with God by inviting them into that conversation and that dialogue, that prayer. That's what prayer is. It's a conversation with God. And how do we help them do that at the freshman year, which is very different than the senior year, right? The freshman year is kind of the mechanics, the basics. Sometimes it's the rethinking of our relationship. What we find is that students who come to a Jesuit high school, especially this Jesuit high school, tend not to have had, and this isn't a judgment, it's just the normal, tend not to have had an updated or more advanced understanding of that relationship. Well, they do in math and science, it kind of progresses. But for some reason at the high school level, it's where that jump has to take place. Let's kind of throw out the baby pictures of our relationship with God and re-invite the students to think about it in a more adult way, a more lasting way, more meaningful way. I'll share a quick story. I used to teach scripture to freshmen. One of my favorite things I've done in my career is teach freshmen scripture. And one of the first projects we did was for them to interview a younger sibling or a younger friend about their beliefs about God. And they would, we'd have the parents' approval and stuff. They'd figure out 5 or 6 questions that asked like a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old their beliefs about God. And they'd draw a picture of God and then they'd share it with the class. What we learned after going through that to the freshmen is how different was a 10-year-old's understanding of God than your own as a high school student at 14 or 15 years old. And they realized, gosh, it hasn't grown that much. That's good. That's good. So now we know we have to develop that a bit more. So to that question about how do we keep our Catholic identity, is one is begin with what matters. A lot of it matters, but with that personal experience of that relationship. We then layer that on a liturgical experience. Chris mentioned being in the choir. I don't know, Matthew, were you in the choir here too? I got cut from the choir because I couldn't sing, so that's another thing that happened to me. But
studio art all the way. I was a studio art guy.
Wasn't my wheelhouse, but my brothers were both in the choir and in the liturgy committees, and we celebrate liturgy beautifully here and invite students to participate in liturgical worship. We have reconciliation. I think it's a really important sacrament that we share with our students several times a year, plus it's available to them throughout the year, to talk about those shadows in their life and reconcile with those things, and go through that particular sacrament as well. The retreat program helps for that tactile experience of their faith. And then our service and justice program, which says that if we are faithful people, ours is a faith that does justice. How do we bring about God's kingdom on this earth? So what we're trying to do is, in all aspects of the student experience, make sure it's rooted in our Catholic identity so they have that personal experience of God. And then they take that, move from Jesuit high school to the world, and advance and grow in that understanding and knowledge and desire to be a faithful person.
I would just add on a practical note, I think we maintain the integrity of our identity by being very intentional about the conversations that we have with our students on a daily basis about their relationship with God. One of the best parts of my day as an employee here, I would say 2 parts: the morning prayer, which is almost always led by a student, and our afternoon examine, where we very intentionally take time to reflect on the gifts that God has given to us on each and every day that we're in session. Just that constant reminder and being very intentional and direct with our students about that relationship, I think really helps us to maintain that, the importance of our identity, at the forefront of everything that we do.
Great stuff. I have a question here from Eric, and this is one that I can answer, is what are the opt-out tests and how do they work? Those are, I believe you're speaking of the challenge test. So challenging into a higher level. That's a great question for Colin in our academic session that we will have. I'll be sure to send out an email. I highly recommend coming in and asking that. But just to speak briefly on it, is our challenge tests are conducted after acceptance into the school. And if we do have students coming from different zip codes with different curriculums and different schools. And so we believe that it's the best and intentional approach to all of our students being properly placed in their classes is to start at a baseline of classes and then challenging into higher level courses. So, challenging it from Algebra 1 into a Geometry, or a Spanish 1 into a Spanish 2. We find that's the best approach because we want to make sure that there's no holes in your teaching, like especially in Algebra 1, for instance, is that making sure that you have all the fundamentals in Algebra 1 is key to the growth in math throughout your high school career and beyond. And so we want to make sure that all of our students are appropriately and properly placed in the right classes. But there is the ability to challenge out of those classes. And trust me, at this point in the stage, early on in the admissions process, you will get a lot of information on that. But that happens after acceptance. You'll receive an email to check the boxes in which classes you would like to opt out or challenge into. I'd say our next question is, can you please comment on what is your acceptance rate? Eduardo, the acceptance rate, it changes year over year, depending on the amount of applicants that come in. And I would say that at the end of the day, we go through the different components of the application process, including recommendations, our application itself, a written essay, and some other components is we evaluate as a committee, and we want students that want to be at Jesuit High School, and those students that have shown the character and the development, and just students that want to come and grow in Jesuit's atmosphere and be a part of all things that Jesuit are there. So I would just highly recommend in sharing that in the application. We love to hear what your family has to say, and then hearing from some of the people that have been in your son's life. I moved down to Casey. Can you talk about financial aid? What are the qualifiers? I have our first in-depth info session is going to be held on Thursday, the 29th. And I'm going to bring on Jessica Billigmeyer, who is in our student accounts and tuition assistance office. And we are going to carve an hour out from 6 to 7 on the 29th. And I'll send out an update that Monday, but you can also find it on our website for our info sessions. But look out in your email. We will talk about tuition assistance in a couple of weeks, so you can ask all of the questions, and the person that's in charge of that can get those answers for you.
After you've been on a previous question.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Go for
it. Thank you, Matthew. The question on acceptance rate, it's a tough one to answer, and I think it's important we share why, because it changes actually quite a bit from year to year. And I'll just share the factors with folks about why that would change. The first one is, how large is the senior class? If it's a really large senior class and they all graduate, then you have a lot of room to fill up the freshman class. If it's a small senior class, then you might have less room. The number of boys graduating from 8th grades in the Sacramento area actually fluctuate quite a bit from year to year. We try and track the data as best we can. With the Catholic schools, where we do a pretty good job with that. It's more difficult for all the 50 or 60 other schools that might be applying to Jesuit. So those various factors come in as to how many end up applying, because how many boys are actually out there to apply, and how much room is in the class. So some years the rate is a very high acceptance rate, and some years the rate is a rather a lower or more competitive acceptance rate. But it varies because those factors are actually not very stable in a year-to-year basis.
Great stuff. Moving forward, we're talking about what is student retention rates, especially students of color. What percentage start as freshmen and stay all 4 years? Mike, I don't know if you have specific out on it, but it's our retention rate is pretty high. We don't lose many students year over year, but there are students that come in and some that transfer at different times. Do you have any specifics on our retention rates or students of color that we could talk about?
No, and we should. One of the things that we just started doing was trying to be more deliberate about tracking retention more than just the overall student body. So we don't have data, but like you said, Matthew, anecdotally, our retention rate overall is quite high, and we don't see a lot of turnover from year to year. The largest year that we see turnover is actually between the freshman and the sophomore year. After the freshman year, there are families and students who say this isn't the right fit, and that's okay. That happens. But after that year, and I think, once you've committed and once that sophomore year hits, very rarely do students leave Jesuit high school. And that's been kind of the rule of thumb for, a very long time. There is that summer between where we do expect that some folks won't return, but after that, they're locked in for the next 3 years.
Absolutely. And then these last two questions, will science be on the exam in January? We have a couple of updates. It's a unique year. It's a unique year in admissions. And so is there a student interview for admission, and will science be on the exam in January? I will be providing a more formal update in response to what I'm sure you're referring to is the HSPT test and what we're doing this year with that, and also for our student interviews. In this wonderful COVID era that we're in, we've had to, just like the open house we did yesterday, we've had to make some changes, and we have to think about how we're doing that. We have some, especially for the student interview, we have some ideas in how to get a great representation and interview from our students that I will be announcing here soon, and I'll make sure everybody gets it. But having everybody come in for interviews in an enclosed space doesn't seem totally viable at this point. As things change and as things move, I will provide an update to all of our families and what we're doing on that front. We have some pretty cool that we're working on that we're fleshing out that I'll be able to get to you. And as for the HSPT test, we just spoke on this, Principal Wood and I, and this year we will not be doing the HSPT test for a number of reasons, and I think most importantly, the fact that it is a unique year, and I think the health and well-being of every student that's coming in and applying at this point, and being in a classroom or not being in a classroom, and the equitable exchange that's happened in the learning environment for our 8th grade students, we wanted to create an environment that the added pressure and of a test coming in, we felt it wasn't responsible for us to do that at that point. But there will be some diagnostic testing after the admissions process happening, because again, we want to make sure that you are fitting in the right classes so that you are set up for success at Jesuit. We want to set you up for success, and then we want to support you along the way, and then we want to help support you on your next transition into life. I always say that Jesuit is more, it's more than a college preparatory. It's a life preparatory. And if I were to, use myself as an example, it's the friendships you make, it's the ability to talk and speak and write and communicate, to be a better husband and coach, employee and employer, and all those fun things in life beyond college into real world experiences. And so thank you to all the Jesuit staff for putting together this weekend's open house. I really appreciate it. We're 14 minutes over our little 30-minute session. Again, I want to thank all of our principals that came on for this last session of the day. This is kind of the conclusion of our open house, Future Marauder Weekend. I want to thank everybody for participating in it. And again, communication, it's happening digitally. So stay tuned to not only our social media, but our website at the admissions page for those info sessions. and email. I'll be sending out emails. Please bear with me. I want you guys to have as much interaction with the people that make this place run. So check those emails, tune into our info sessions if you're interested about the topic. If you're not, maybe catch the next one. But we want to provide as many opportunities to help you make this informed decision in this big transition going into high school. We hope that you feel the spirit of Jesuit, the enthusiasm of Jesuit. We want all of your sons to be a part of this wonderful place and walk across that graduation stage in 4 years. So I do appreciate everybody here that came and spoke on this panel, everybody that spoke in the last sessions, and everybody that participated this weekend and sat and asked such great questions. Jesuit it's a community effort, and when we all come together, some awesome stuff happens. So I'm happy and excited to be a part of it. I'm happy all of you guys are. Are there any last words you guys want to share with these families that are hanging on here at the end? Anything left to say before we close down Future Marauder Weekend?
Just thank you to you, Matthew and Chris, for all your incredible work, doing what you can to tell our story and to invite folks into this community. I'm never, I always love Matthew's enthusiasm. So that gives me joy, and that's a good thing. And to the families that are out there, Matthew and Chris are great resources for you to get your questions answered, but you can also use the rest of us as well, right? If there's something specific, they don't mind if you come to myself, Dr. Desmond, Dean Theodule, Colin O'Connor, John McGarry, our president. We're happy to help. We're all on this mission together. Last thing I would say is what gives me great pride right now and encouragement is that Matthew is in his third year, and Dean Theodule is in his third year, and Dr. Desmond is in her third year, and our president, John McGarry, is in his third year, and our CFO is in her third year. That means 3 years ago, it was very difficult for me. There was a lot of new folks, but what that means now is that we have a team that enjoys each other and supports one another and are committed to this mission together. And I know that would matter to me for my children's school, that the school leadership is solid and cares for one another and supports one another. And we're friends. It's a great team to be a part of. So I'm just blessed by that team, by our camaraderie and our commitment to you, our families, which is why we come to work every day. So I'm going to hop off now. I thank you all for being here. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Dean Theodule, Dr. Desmond. It's always a pleasure to work with you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
See you guys all soon. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.